Hey babies, hey babies, hey babies. Hi everyone, hi everyone. Happy Wednesday. All right, we have our roster for now, Callow, for now.
Yeah, I was gonna say no real big shocks, I would say. I don't
Nope.
know how you feel. It was pretty much how I envisioned it, settling out. And I know full well this is not the final roster heading into the season. I think there's still gonna be some movement, maybe today or tomorrow.
For everybody, I mean, it's become a thing around the league. Like, look at all the trades that occurred a week ago, including ours with Brian Robinson. There's a lot of movement that happens. I'm watching a specific position very closely. I still think a quarterback is somewhat in play off of what happened over the summer with specifically Sam Hartman and Josh Johnson, but the initial 53 is set. I'll give you a couple names that were mildly surprising to me, but again, these are fringe roster decisions now. Like, I thought Jalen Holmes would probably make the team as like a 10th defensive lineman. That didn't happen. I thought maybe Carl Davis or Sheldon Day would make the team. That didn't happen. I thought maybe if KJ Osborne was going to get cut, which he was, Ja'Cory Brooks might surprise you and make the roster. That didn't happen. So there's a few, again, like mild surprises. Realistically, like from the get-go, like most of the jobs felt very set for this team coming into the summer. Not much happened that really changed much. There were injuries, but no major ones, fortunately, that really like knocked anybody out where you had to really kind of change your thinking about his position group. There were a couple surprises of people that really stood out that we'll talk about in a minute, but largely we ended where we started, which was, there were a couple of people that were going to surprise you. There were a couple of decisions that maybe like I didn't expect to go that way, but largely, if you told me at the beginning of camp, this is what the roster would look like at the end of camp, I'd be like, yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah, it was about right. I think some of the numbers, like when you just look at them in general, are a little bit, off just in terms of what you maybe thought. Like only 5 wide receivers were
Yeah.
kept. So there wasn't really a battle to be had, after the draft picks and younger players. The other one that I thought was just interesting that I tabbed on my show as it happened yesterday live was they did keep 4 tight ends, which I thought was a little bit of a shock, like having both the, quote unquote receiving tight end and blocking tight end. And I think in Yankov's case, special teams tight end is what we'll call him essentially. That was a little bit, but at the same time, there's nothing to really be too shocked about. There were just kind of blips like, they decided to do that, as opposed to something else.
Yeah, I had 4 tight ends the whole time. They were about one short on the defensive line than I thought. I thought it'd be 10, not 9. They listed as 8, but Von Miller to me is a defensive lineman, so that really makes it 9 to me because it says 7 linebackers. I think of Nick Bellore as just a special teams player, not a linebacker, and I think of Von Miller as a defensive end, not a linebacker. So I think that number looks a little bit skewed, but that's how it's totaled out. The big one for me was this, which is only 5 wide receivers made the initial 53-man roster. And so I still believe a 6th is coming. I thought, by the end of camp, especially with Noah Brown, forget the Terry situation for a minute. With Noah Brown being, I don't know, let's see, is he going to be available or not? Like the whole time with Terry, I'm like, hopefully he'll figure it out. Hopefully he'll be fine. Hopefully he'll be back out there. I'm going to count on him. Like maybe I shouldn't have as of a couple weeks ago, but I'm going to count on him. Noah Brown's different situation. Noah Brown left last year with an internal injury. I think there was probably some doubt whether he'd play again. Spring rolls around. He's re-signed. He gets an injury in the spring. He's missed a lot of camp. All of a sudden, he's a valuable player on this team, but he has not been on the field very much. So I felt for that reason alone, they would keep a 6th receiver. And I assumed it would be a veteran because of what's going on with Terry, you cannot have Jalen Lane, Luke McCaffrey, Ja'Cory Brooks running, no veterans, with Debo running around. Like, so the whole time I'm like, it's going to be a veteran. And I'd say the front runner for that was KJ Osborne. All along, he was kind of second in line as the punt returner or the backup punt returner or potentially the primary punt returner. I know they want to give that to Lane. He seemed to have a leg up on Gallup the whole time. Chris Moore had a good start to camp. Was when Terry wasn't practicing, kind of like the replacement of him on the field. As time went by, over and over and over, you'd see the same thing. He gets separation, gets open, and then he doesn't catch the ball. And this happened over and over and over. But I thought it would be one of those three. Gallup never really stood out. He was a low risk, high reward. That's why he was an early cut. I assumed Osborne would make the team based on Noah Brown's, I think the question of whether how available will he be, not only to start the season, but throughout. So that's the one mild surprise that they only kept 5 and they didn't keep Ja'Cory Brooks, who I assume is going to be on the practice squad. By the time you hear this today, if you're listening on the podcast, you probably will hear that. That I assume he'll be one of them there. But it does make me believe that of the things that they're looking at to make a move about, it will be this position, because I believe a 6th will be here, and clearly it was somebody who was on someone else's team.
Yeah, and with Osborne, I thought I wouldn't say I was shocked about the cut with Osborne, but I would say he was claimed last year and made it all the way through, through whatever week he got claimed off of, through the offseason, through now. So I kind of thought too, you can kind of nail like which players on a roster are, playing it right and that the coaches and the GM like. And I thought Osborne was playing into that pretty perfectly, even though we hadn't really seen too much from him. He had clearly done enough and been a good enough teammate that he had stuck around this long. I kind of had him making the team as well. So they're going to do exactly what they did last year, where they got Noah Brown, off of the scrap heap, and all of a sudden he's a contributor. So whoever that wide receiver ends up being, that is going to be, signed in the next 24 hours is what my guess is going to be to join the roster.
100%. Like just think about this for a minute. Like, Noah Brown was warming up during the Ravens game. That's a really good sign that things are going the right way. Dan Quinn described it as arrows are going up for him. That's a really good sign, right? Like all of those things, but he hasn't practiced much. And if they were to go into the regular season with the roster as is at that position group, it's a total of 5 receivers, 2 of which did not practice during training camp or barely practiced during training camp. No, like that's just as a fail-safe, you're not walking into the season that way. A 6th is coming one way or another. And because of the way they put the initial 53 out there, it does read to me like it's somebody from another team. And this was one of the things that I think was probably, if you ask the coaches, probably a disappointment of camp. Between Michael Gallup, Chris Moore, and KJ Osborne, not one of them earned one of the spots to be on a team that needed to have somebody here. So I would say like that's probably one of the small minor letdowns of camp, is that one of them didn't earn the right to be on the team to start the season when they need a veteran on the team right now.
Yeah, and had extra opportunity. This wasn't like, they only got a few snaps, right? Because the wide receivers ahead of them were set. No, they were missing their number 1 wide receiver and their number, 3 wide receiver the entire time. And no one took advantage of the opportunity. I would say that's probably the storyline of training camp after it ending, was there was ample opportunity for someone to step up and make this team in both Terry and Noah Brown's absence. And neither one did. And in fact, I'd kind of settled in by the end of, the last preseason game, was like Jalen Lane seemed to be the one that kind of took advantage of the extra targets. He was the one that kind of shined a little bit more than the others. And so I'm sure they're happy about that. But I also think, not unlike what they're going to do with Bill, you're not going to throw too much at any kind of rookie offensive player. So they probably were like, all right, we're going to have to find another veteran some other way.
One of the other position groups was quarterback. I didn't know what they would do here. They did keep 3. I'm not surprised it's not Sam Hartman. He had a really rough summer. I want to be fair to him. I didn't realize this until camp rolled around. He did have offseason shoulder surgery. So there's that. I guess we'll find out if he's on the practice squad today. Everyone knows he has a very close relationship with Jaden Daniels. But after what we saw this summer, 2025 is not the year I think we want to see him playing if he was forced into action. And the way Marcus Mariota spent the summer, basically not practicing very much with a lower leg strain, this suddenly became important. It became obvious, like, there's no question who their backup quarterback is. The problem is he going to be available? Like Noah Brown, I thought it was very good that he returned to practice in a limited form late last week and did all the warm-ups during the Ravens game. So that was a really good sign that everything's moving in the right direction. But the way the quarterbacks played in the preseason, both of them, not unlike receiver, it was like, oh man, like, we might have to seriously look outside to find whoever number 3 is. And in most cases, I wouldn't be overly concerned about it. And as you like to point out, if we're at that point, we're cooked anyway, which is probably true. Like, we are cooked if it like gets to that point. Still, like if Mariota isn't 100%, even at the early part of the season, Jaden rolls an ankle, all of a sudden you're turning to that and you're just trying to get to a bridge. I feel much more comfortable with a healthy Mariota than anything I saw. For now, it's Josh Johnson, and I think it will be for now, but I'm open to the idea of let's see how they look at the quarterbacks who were released and if they think that there's a different option there just based on early in the season. I mentioned Tommy DeVito yesterday. I think he's going to get signed by somebody. I was pulling state secrets on, well, we're playing them in a week and a half. There seems to be a couple of reasons why to give a look at him. We're talking about a third quarterback. I'm sure he wants to go somewhere where he has a chance to literally compete, which would not be here. But I'm watching quarterback now too. And there was a part of me that felt like, I think they might just, if they feel good about Mariota, just keep 2. Either put Hartman or Johnson on the practice squad and save a roster spot for another spot, but that's not the direction they went.
I mean, there was a familiar name released this morning that I think, they could put, on the roster.
Heineke?
And that's your boy. Yeah, it's your boy, TH. I think, look, at the same time, he's a little Rex Grossman. At least I know he's going to chuck it down the field at some point to Terry. So, like, I'm just saying they could be worse when it comes to third-string quarterbacks. He's been here. Fan base likes him. He'd be the third stringer. There's no pressure, and we all know he ain't threatening either one of those quarterbacks. So I'm just saying, I think that's a name to pay attention to.
Boy, what a crazy week we've had. Heineke got cut. Hal gets traded to Philadelphia. Wentz is back, goes to Minnesota as the backup quarterback. Woo, that's some triggering news the last few days.
What's Garrett Gilbert doing? Does he have a real job somewhere? A non-football job somewhere?
Oh, no. This is minor, and I want to stay on our team, but the Minnesota chose Wentz over Howell was kind of like, where's Scott Abraham on that? I want his take on that one. Really? I was like, wow.
Here's the thing. I don't doubt KOC, though. Like, I cite a stat all the time now where, like, KOC, since he took over in Minnesota, because I had to do my fantasy draft this week, it was the craziest stat I've read. His quarterbacks, doesn't matter who it is, they average the most points like per game since he became a head coach. It doesn't matter who they are. So like if he's going, I don't want Sam Howell, I'm believing him. I'm not doubting him. And he's saying Carson Wentz gives us a better chance.
That tree of LaFleur, McVay, really, it sounds like KOC for the quarterbacks, for everybody, because he's got the reputation for it. Shanahan, too. I think Shanahan's really known for the offensive scheme and the run game more than anything. But if McVay or KOC specifically, if they don't want you, that's not a great sign. And the fact that Minnesota went with Wentz, and we know what Wentz is, over a younger Howell, who I would describe as typically far more accurate than Wentz ever was, post his early Philadelphia career. That's very telling to me, which is why I think I said yesterday, if it got to the point, because Philadelphia acquired him because Tanner McKee got hurt. And so, that's why they acquired him. They have their backup. Like, that's why they acquired him. We don't get him till late in the season, but like, that alone, I was like, oh man, if they have to turn to him, I don't know. Because KOC turning his back on you is that's not a really good sign. It really isn't.
It's a little Star Wars-esque. You get shipped out. You're kind of dead to him at that point.
All right, let's do a AAA review. You can join AAA's new Commanders MVP membership. Get all the great services of AAA, plus all sorts of discounts on merch, tickets, all that stuff from AAA. And I want to, shout out Ale Cajo, who was the name of the summer that actually emerged. I think like we said from the get-go, there were not a lot of spots, I think, for anybody to really step up and make a name for themselves. But linebacker was an opening. I wouldn't have seen this coming because Jordan McGee and Kane Medrano are draft picks of the last 2 years. You know what Bobby Wagner and Frankie Louvu are. You know Nick Ballore is going to make the team because he's one of their special teams aces. There just wasn't a lot of room for literally anybody else. And here's somebody who made a name for himself. Like he went undrafted. He didn't play a ton at UCLA. I'd love to talk to Ken Norton about it because I have a feeling this is one of those people that he pointed to Adam Peters said, bring this guy in here. I'd heard he didn't, not like Medrano, didn't play that much. He doesn't have the Medrano speed, but they really like the way he squares up, tackles. He really stood out in the preseason. And these are great stories. Like whenever you get one of these players who comes out of nowhere and makes such an impression that he makes the team as an undrafted free agent, he deserves, his flowers here, and he's getting them today. That's a really incredible thing that he made the team.
Yeah, in a season or an off season where there weren't really many battles or weren't many shocks yesterday, this was the one, I would say, where not that it was shocking because we had heard great things about him through camp, but
not by the end. No, it wasn't a shock by the end. At the beginning, I'm like, I don't even know who that is, right. and then by the end, this is one of those where by the end you go, wow, like here's somebody who truly made an impression to make the team.
Exactly. Like you knew it was going to happen by yesterday, essentially, but it's a good storyline that, comes to fruition with that. And especially with the position group where we've been kind of joking about it, like who's eventually going to step up because Wagner ain't playing forever. Louvu's got 2 years left on his deal. Like they need to kind of groom at least a contributor behind them somewhere along the lines. And they start that right now.
Yeah, that position group is Bobby Wagner for as long as he wants to do it, which who knows right. How much longer. Jordan McGee is supposed to be his heir apparent. Frankie Louvu, if he has anything close to or better than the season he had a year ago, he's going to get extended in the offseason. He's going to be one of the 5 or 6 deals that Adam Peters is going to have to deal with next year. They're going to have to give a lot of money to Larry Tunsil. He'll be in the last year of his deal. They'll have to make a decision about Marshawn Lattimore. They'll have to make a decision about Deebo Samuel. Frankie Louvu is going to be entering last year of his deal. If he has anything close to what he did a year ago or better in a better defense in front of him, they're going to have to extend him. So there's a lot of work that's going to have to be done, with these veteran players. Zach Ertz is another one. He's like Wagner. I don't know. Eckler, another one. I don't know. I guess probably we'll make decisions about players like that on the other side, because in both of those cases, they're not making big money deals or they're not making long-term deals. So we'll just have to see where those go. There's a lot of work, obviously, to be done here with all of them. All right, 2 of the big news things that I think are worth going into as well. I was surprised to see this one pop up. Diana Rossini was reporting by midday that the Commanders were shopping Noah Igbenogany, who is a very, very good depth corner for them. He can play both inside and outside. He is a former, people forget this, he's a former first-round pick. So he's a high-end athlete. They have tried him out on special teams a little bit too. I think he could do kick returns in a pinch if they asked him to do it. He is fast. The knock on him that they've had with him is this: the penalty flags find him. He's very fast. He's good. But at the point of, at the critical moment, the flags find him. And he had another one with Jamar Chase. I don't even think that was a great call. But he had one with Jamar Chase in that Monday night preseason game. I thought he had a terrific camp. We know who their frontline starters are, though, with Marshawn Lattimore, Trey Amos, Mike Sanders primary backup Jonathan Jones. They have a couple of development corners that I think that they like, and Carlin Viggers had a rough first preseason, but they really believe in him. I assume he'll be on the practice squad, and they're going to try to develop him. When Antonio Hamilton showed up in the middle of camp, who was one of the workout players that ended up getting signed, he made an impression on them late in camp. So I think that's the reason why they were comfortable with the idea of, let's see if there's something out there for us. If they were to move him, I would point out, and I'm going to bring this up a little bit later too, of a team that I'm watching very closely, which is New England. They kept 8 wide receivers. One of them went on IR, but they kept 8. They're moving. They didn't want to. They want to trade one of them. I don't know which one, and I don't know to who, but you're not keeping 8 wide receivers. They did it because they think there's some value there. And so I don't know if this will be something that'll be interesting if nothing happens today for Adam Peters when he does his press conference later today, because this was out there. He doesn't have to comment on a report. No one's denying it. And so, like this one is live is the way I would put it here. This one's live to me. Does Igbenogany get moved for probably not a pick, probably a player from another team? That's how I would kind of see it.
Yeah, to me, this reminded me of the Brian Robinson trade, just in that it seems like it's asset management for Adam Peters, right? You don't let go of an asset for no reason. I'm not saying you get
There's
a
no
6th
reason
round.
to cut him. There's absolutely no reason to cut him. Like, he is one of the top 5 corners on the team. You don't just let him go. Now, whether he's on the team beyond the next couple of days, I don't know, but I wouldn't have cut him either. That's not the answer here.
Yeah, and this is what I was almost looking for. Like, if they weren't going to get a draft pick for Robinson, I was circling what team is going to give you some depth at the bottom of the roster that you kind of need. This is what it screams with Igbenogany, whether it's a wide receiver, maybe it's a defensive lineman on any position there, maybe it's somewhere else that they're looking. But that's when I saw that too. I went, okay, they're just trying to move him to kind of shore up the bottom of the roster, which is what Adam Peters, this is his time to shine at this time of the year to do.
It's another signal of the way that they have flipped around that position group in a year is almost unbelievable. You just think back for a second. The starting corners last year were Benjamin St. Juste, Emmanuel Forbes, and a rookie, Mike Sanderstil. And then eventually they had to move Sanderstil to an outside position, which he ultimately thrived at by the end of the year. Went and acquired an injured Marshawn Lattimore to hopefully get something out of him last year, but really more for this year and moving forward, because they had to get an answer at the position. And they are at the point now where they're talking about trading a valuable backup, borderline starter, who is their 5th corner. They have really done an amazing job with that position group. It went from a massive weakness on the team to a massive strength almost overnight.
No, Adam Peters gives me Brian McClellan vibe with the Caps. He clearly sees what the weakness is and doesn't just try to shore it up. He throws like 5 different items at it. So in terms of how they've both, fixed their rosters, McClellan was GM for the first time like 10 years ago at this point. But Peters reminds me of that, where he literally will look at the roster and go, well, that's not good enough. And all of a sudden attacks it 2 or 3 times, and all of a sudden the unit has completely changed over.
Yeah.
You really look at that unit from a year ago, it's literally completely different. There's not the top 3 players are all gone for different players now.
The other piece of news to start the season is that Sam Cosmi is going to start the season on PUP, which means he has to miss a mandatory 4 games. So we won't know if he's going to be playing in week 5 until they open the practice window for him. What was described to me early in the summer was he was ahead of schedule. And then I was really surprised when Dan Quinn early in camp said it was on the table for him to return in week 1. That was really newsworthy to me. I was shocked by that. I was under the impression he was bare minimum missing the first 4 games and maybe half of the season. You'll recall when he tore his ACL was in January.
Yeah.
So it felt very, a really quick return. Everybody's different, so you never know. But it felt like a really quick return. I kind of got the impression that Cosmi was a touch surprised by the idea that he would return by week 1 too. So I think what Dan Quinn meant by saying that really wasn't that he expected him to play week 1, but it was possible in his mind, from what he could tell, that he would be able to play before week 4. And if that's the case, then they had to seriously consider, do we even put him on PUP? And then are you locking up a roster spot for a player who's not going to play weeks 1, week 2, week 3 to save him for week 4? And I guess they felt like it's just not that close. So I guess this one's kind of off the radar for at least a few weeks until they decide to actually open the practice window for him, ramp him up to play, but he won't play for the first month. And then I'll be interested to see what they do. So now we open up what happens now against the Giants. Is Nick Allegretti the starting guard? Andrew Wiley's the starting tackle? Is Josh Connerly the starting tackle and Andrew Wiley the starting guard? Is Wiley just the backup? So that'll be an interesting question for Dan Quinn today.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think that's what everyone's going to pay attention to, is what offensive linemen are out there for practice this week. When it comes to Cosmi as well, I had kind of predicted this in that the first 2 games were going to put him on PUP. It wasn't really going to be about him. having a guy who didn't practice all this time, then play 2 games in 5 days. Once again, I keep circling that like it's going to make some weird circumstances. I didn't think he was going to play in either one. So all of a sudden you're kind of weighing, hey, do we really waste a roster spot for a guy that's not going to play on those first 2 games when we're going to need to keep guys fresh? I thought it was a no-brainer. You put him on PUP. I'd rather be a little more cautious about this too than try to rush him back as well. So I'm not surprised here. I just think the schedule dictated this as well.
Yeah, they didn't even open the practice window for him yet. So, like,
right.
And they're very careful about ramping people up to play. So, like, I'm hoping, we'll find out in the next couple of weeks. If they open that practice window in week 1, week 2, then hopefully he's ready by week 5 at the earliest. That's the hope. We'll see what Dan Quinn says about it now that they've made this decision. But it is a mandatory, you have to miss 4 games. So he is going to miss a quarter of the season. All right, let me take a quick break. We'll do some of the news from the other cuts and moves from around the league next. Brave Watch the Show, ESPN 630 Sports Capital. All right, welcome back. Real quickly, I just want to talk about this for a moment. Dylan Gabriel is the backup quarterback for the Browns. They traded Kenny Pickett to the Raiders. So they, clearly ridiculously don't need 4 quarterbacks on their roster. And they did the right thing by trading, I believe, him. He's probably like, I don't know what I got to do here, man. He was the first of the 4, remember, that came in. Then they signed Flacco. Then they drafted 2 quarterbacks. He's probably like, you just cut my legs out from under me. And he knew that the whole time. So he gets to go to a place where he gets to at least compete for a while with Vegas. They had an injury with Aiden O'Connell, so they need a backup immediately. So he gets a good spot to at least be there. Then became what became a circus, but it's a circus of their own making. You draft 2 quarterbacks in the mid rounds, both with big names. The one with the bigger name and the bigger profile is actually the second of the 2 that was picked. You've been asking for this. And so here comes the biggest storyline ever surrounding a 5th round draft pick, because that's what he is. And, I didn't pay enough close attention to see how they played. I saw it like everybody else. I was curious about them. So when they popped up, I would watch some of their highlights or watch a little bit of them to see what they both looked like, because I was just curious about them. But in neither case am I like, that's the quarterback of the future. So it is really one of the most, I think, distracting headlines any team has ever put themselves into, with likely not an upside of, we have our guy for the future. That's the craziest part of the whole thing here.
Yeah, no, this is one that, as you said, it's been brewing the entire time. Whatever decision they made, people were going to react to. Like, if they made Shedeur the backup, people would have been, oh, well, he's the later draft pick. Why did he get the second?
They're saying you just did that because it's him, and
right.
not because he earned the job. You just gave it to him because you want to avoid the problem of having to answer a question about it.
This is what I've said about Shedeur over the last month. It's not Shedeur himself that I'm irked at. It's the circus that comes with him. It's like Tim Tebow. It's like those types. We've seen this before, where the talent doesn't warrant the reaction, but it's a storyline. And so this is their grave. They've got to lie in it a little bit here. And the other side of all of this with the Browns is, I get it. You're just trying to throw what against the wall and see what sticks. And they're all going to play eventually. But you did yourself no favors the way, that you have handled this whole situation. And just by naming Flacco the starter so early on too. So everyone was paying attention to this battle as well. So good for them for getting the 5th round pick for Kenny Pickett. But at the same time, you've got to deal with those 2 as the backups. And we'll see. Joe Flacco is very pedestrian, very, very pedestrian. And how soon until they start calling for both of those guys? I mean, it's going to be fast, I'm guessing, in Cleveland, because we kind of know what you get with Flacco at this point.
Yeah, and if they're okay, let's just assume they're not very good this year, right? Let's just assume that they're not, because especially in that division, I mean, come on, they're not going to end up being competitive there, and they're not very good. So now you got to have them play. Well, they have 2 first-round picks. They have Jacksonville's and theirs next year, so they got 2 shots at potentially being pretty high here. Arch Manning is, we'll see, we'll see what the situation is with him. That family has a history of figuring out where their guy really, really, really wants to play. And if he is going to be the number 1 overall pick, and I think we should play out a college football season before we even get there. If he's going to be the number 1 overall pick, will he dictate where he wants to go? And there's Would they be okay with New Orleans? I don't know. Would they be okay with Cleveland? I don't know. Like, you don't know that, but they got a couple bites of the apple here. That's the silliest part of this whole thing. If they end up with a top 5 pick or 2 of them, and you could make a case that either one of those things could happen, or they have 2 pretty high first round picks that if the wrong team has the number one, like Tennessee stinks again for whatever reason, but they got Cam Ward, like they're not going to pick a quarterback. So they're now in the business of trading down. Cleveland will have the arsenal to potentially do something like that. Then all this is for nothing because like neither one of them are going to end up being the guy. I never understood. Like, I'm fine that they picked one of them, and I don't care which round they did it. I didn't understand why they picked both of them. And they've had a summer of Michigas about nothing because neither one of them are likely to be the answer at the position. That's the craziest part of this whole thing. And I'll still, to this day, do not understand why they made the Sanders selection. If they had made him in a 3rd round pick, fine. Once they did Dylan Gabriel, why were they picking another quarterback, especially one with a profile? It never made sense to me at all. You buried yourself. You put your coach in a very difficult spot the whole spring and summer. If Shador outperforms everybody, that's the best case scenario. He didn't, and now you're in this hole of trying to explain away what do we do with the quarterbacks with an oversized personality and profile of a 5th round pick. It's crazy.
See, I'm the opposite of you. I think this was the right way to play it because of Deshaun and the injury. You weren't going to be able to play him. You throw, what against the wall and see what sticks. And if Gabriel or Shador by the end of the season ends up being a starting caliber quarterback, you can either roll with one of them or trade one of them for a mid-round pick. I'm going to guess here because if they're high enough, they're going to take a high quarterback, right? I think more teams should do this where you keep picking quarterbacks until one of them works out. Because guess what? Guess what they can do too? Let's say they get a high enough pick, and let's say it's Arch or whoever is at the top of the draft. They're both 5th round picks. You can cut them. No one cares at that point either. So for me, I've said this from the get-go with them. Drafting them both, I'm fine. I think more teams should do this. Go look at what the Redskins did in 2012 where they drafted RG3 and Kirk Cousins. That worked out for them, right? It was a weird circumstance, but it worked out in the end. So I would just say I'm okay with this. The circus comes along with it, though, because you did draft Shador. But if either one of them ends up working out and you can move them for value or you find your starter, I'm okay with it. It's not conventional by any means.
So, like, they're treating Shador like a cryptocurrency.
Yes.
Like, they're going, we're going to buy him, for nothing, right?
Yes.
Like, he's a 5th round pick. We're paying nothing for him. Because of his profile, if he hits, great. He's ours at a really cheap rate. If he's pretty good, then you think you can use him as an asset to trade him somewhere else? That's your position on this, that it's kind of boomer bust with him. And, if it goes sideways, well, he's just a 5th round pick. But if it goes really well, he's either our quarterback or we're trading him for something more than what we got him for. Like, that's how you're looking at it.
That's what I would say. Yeah, because he's going to get playing time. Like, both of these guys are going to play this year. So you're going to see how they end up working out. I thought the dumbest Twitter discussion of all time was happening yesterday where RG3 and Jeff Schwartz are going at it because RG3 said he was playing with 5th string linemen, and Schwartz is like, there's no such thing as a 5th string lineman. There's just different linemen. And like, right. It's so stupid that the circus that's coming along with him is at this point.
Gabriel played with the backups too. Like, what are you talking about?
Right, exactly. But what I'm getting at is basically you've got this circus coming along with it, but no one's going to remember this if he ends up actually playing well. And you can move him for something. Look at what literally has happened over the last week. Kenny Pickett got moved for a 5th round pick. Like, if he can play at all, somebody will throw you a draft pick, or you roll forward with them because last time I checked, they're in cap hell with Deshaun Watson playing as well. So they would need a really cheap quarterback to move forward anyways. I've liked this move by the Browns. I don't love it, but I see what they're doing here. And as I said, unconventional is the word, but you just keep picking quarterbacks till you get one, though.
The one thing I would argue about that is when you have both of them there, you have to make a choice internally. Who are you trying to develop?
That's
because
fair.
you can't give the same amount of time to everybody. Like somebody has to get the reps in practice. Somebody has to get the attention of the quarterback coach. Someone has to get Stefanski's attention all the time. It can't be both of them. You're not moving forward if that's what you're doing with both of them. And then what you're just saying, well, Flacco's good. Just let him do whatever he wants over there. Like, it just, to me, it's like, this isn't a bunch of relief pitchers where you got a bullpen coach and they're just working with all of them. That's not what this is. And so from that perspective, I'd be like, I don't know that either one of them are getting the time necessary to actually develop. Shador, I guess, is just such a big name with such a big profile. And like the value add of using that low of a pick with that salary structure on him does give you the potential for an asset. It's also a headache, and it's been a headache. And if I'm Stefanski, I didn't ask for this. You know, like that, if I'm the coach, I'm like, you just put a mess on my table and I'm not happy about it, but I'll hear you out on your, you know what? We're buying a cryptocurrency here and he might be Bitcoin. And if he is, then we either hit the jackpot or we trade him for a jackpot than what we had him for.
Well, I think the other side with both of them too is you can't also put the rest of your roster in jeopardy with two guys that can't run an offense, right? So that's what Flacco is. Flacco for a month is going to run the offense professionally until those two, or one of those two, can look competent out there on the field. I think that's really why Flacco's playing here. Is you're not going to hand over an entire NFL offense to a mid-round pick rookie, no matter which one it is here. So I think this is also the other side of this is they're also doing right by their veterans a little bit by going, okay, we're not going to put an unprofessional offense out in front of you too, but let's see what that timeline looks like. I'm guessing it's going to be a month, at least a month before they turn to one of those two. And when they do, they're going to see what they have because, as you know, once the lights turn on, you actually don't know how some of these guys are actually going to perform. And that's what I think is going to be the interesting storyline with them.
All right, let me get into a couple of other moves that happened that I think could affect us because I'm really watching wide receiver for the Commanders here. They only kept 5 after the initial 53 was put out. I expected 6. Typically, that's the number you get with wide receivers. I thought the whole way it would be a veteran just based on Terry's situation and Noah Brown's injury situation where neither have practiced throughout camp. I thought for them to feel good about going into week 1, there would be a 6th receiver. And in all likelihood, I like what Ja'Cory Brooks did in camp too. But, you know, the other options currently outside of Debo are young players, Luke McCaffrey, Jalen Lane. I just assume they're going to go with a veteran here. And I thought the leg up was KJ Osborne. If there was a mild surprise, he was the one that was released. So was Gallup. So was Chris Moore. So they didn't keep any of the veterans that they had. I think somebody's coming here. And there's a couple notable names that were cut yesterday. Trey Palmer by the Buccaneers, Malachi Corley by the Jets. I'm not sure about the Corley one because outside of Garrett Wilson, who are their receivers actually? So that one's like one of those where I'm like, I don't know. And it could be a bad fit, whatever, but the guy's talented. So that's a name I'm going to watch. With Trey Palmer, he's a pro. He's a speed receiver. He can stretch the field. I'm not calling him a front end receiver, but he got caught up in what is, I think, maybe the best wide receiver core in the NFL right now. Mike Evans is a number 3 on that team. He's a number 3 on that team. Chris Godwin, Emeka Egbuka, who I think is going to be a stud, okay, is going to end up being their number 1. Chris Godwin's healthy. Mike Evans is their 3. Jalen McMillan is an unbelievable number 4. He's injured right now, so I don't know how much time he's in. He might be missing the majority of the season. But still, when they get all of them together, that's an unbelievable top 4. This guy was cut because the competition is so crazy on that team. Their wide receiving core is so deep. That's why he got cut. He's a name I'm going to watch as well. I think my point is I think there's a receiver coming here. I don't know where. These were a couple names that stood out to me.
Yeah, I thought Corley's an interesting one because he screams to me as well, like get him a change of scenery and maybe it, revamps his career a little bit. I know he had high expectations up there in New York. I know he was only like a 3rd round pick, but he screams to me like get him into a different situation and maybe you can kind of unlock something with him because let's be honest here too, like you're joining that Jets franchise and what happened last year, it's not a good look for anybody, let alone a young player that's trying to figure out how to be a pro. So that's the guy that jumped out to me. I think one that intrigues me is I know he didn't stick there, but Hunter Renfrow got dropped by the Panthers. Do you think he could be a professional not quarterback, professional wide receiver here with the group? I don't know, but there were a couple names he popped off for me for one, because if they're not, trading Thielen, it means that they think, he's going to fill the void of veteran wide receiver down there. So yeah, there are a couple names. Corley is intriguing to me just because he does have that younger upside a little bit. And I think I love the change of scenery kind of thing with any athlete in any sport. And he screams like he could actually still have a little bit of a future ahead of him.
And I'll reiterate this one. The Patriots kept 8 wide receivers. There's a reason. There's a reason why they did that. Like, they didn't want to cut guys that were going to get picked up. They think there's some value here. Only they know which are the guys they think are going to be Drake May's guys and which ones they think are somewhat expendable here. Stephon Diggs is still on this team. Kendrick Bourne is still on that team. Demario Douglas, very good, small, speedy, inside, outside receiver for them. They got a number of young guys. One, Jalen Polk, who played at Washington with Roma Dunze, Michael Penix, all that stuff, and another guy by the name of Javon Baker. Now, we got to see them a few weeks ago. One of these guys is getting traded, like not unlike the conversation we had about, Noah Igbenogany. I think he, if you're not going to get something for him, I wouldn't trade him. He's a valuable player. You keep him on your team. But I feel the same thing is happening there, that one of these younger guys is getting moved. You don't carry 8 receivers into the season, and they didn't want to just cut them. So I'm watching them very closely too. What are they looking for one of these guys? And I bet you it's who is the guy that May looks for or has a connection with. He's staying, and the other one is probably on the trade market.
Yeah, they're hoarding wide receivers right now. So there's got to be at least 1 or 2 moves that are about to happen here. And do they need a corner? Well, Igbenogany could be their answer there too.
That's right. All right, let me take a quick break. I'll be right back. Brave Watch the Show, ESPN 630, the Sports Capital. All right, welcome back. I want to start this segment on a bit of a sad note. My friend, colleague, Rick Snider passed away yesterday. He suffered a stroke a while ago. I don't remember exactly when, within the last couple of weeks, I think. And unfortunately, it ended up taking his life. And I want to talk about Rick just for a few moments here, because every summer I would reconnect with him at training camp. I loved Rick. He was one of the people, who was he started covering the Redskins in the late 70s, wrote for the Washington Times forever. And then as the media landscape changed, he ended up, working for a number of different outlets, but always kind of stayed true to being a real true pro. And he was a great writer, and he was great context for the team, had a great feel for the team, had great relationships with the team. And when I was young, and I walked into the press room for the, first couple of years, as a young person, there are people like, if you don't get accepted by people like Rick Snider, John Keim, David Elfin, Paul Woody, others who'd been there a long time and had done the job, it's hard to succeed. And he was one of the most helpful, friendly, funny, nicest people. And I'll never really kind of forget that about him. And I appreciate that, because when you're young and you just get into it, it's one thing now that I've been doing it for 25 years, I feel like I have my place there. But when you're young and you walk into a place like that, it can be, it can be intimidating, and you need the people who have been there and are known there and are valued there and are respected there to kind of show you some of that respect or show you the way a little bit. He did that for me, and I appreciate that. Rick and I had a lot in common. He liked good barbecue. So did I. He loved horse racing. So did I. We would always talk. He would write about the Preakness and write about all the major horse races. I love that about him too. We had that in common. And obviously he wrote about the Redskins Commanders forever, wrote books about them. So we had that too. And he just genuinely was a very witty, fun, I think positive outlook guy. I mean, he's gone through the ups and downs of this industry as much as anybody. And he was able to find new ways to keep his voice, he put together a YouTube series that people actually got into with these give me 2 minutes stuff with Rick Snider's Washington. He was a hard worker. He gave tours around Washington, D.C. to tourists. He would show them around. He wrote books about cocktails that presidents liked. He did so many different things. I think it is inspiring that he kind of did not say just because this group doesn't want me any longer that my voice doesn't matter. And I really appreciated that about him. And it was very sad to see that he passed. I really enjoyed him. He was a frequent guest on the show. And honestly, I called him a friend. So I'm sorry to see that news yesterday with Rick.
No, that was a sad one to see yesterday. And with Rick too, I always appreciated that. Like, he was the king of hustle. Like, okay, if I'm not here, I'm doing this. I'm with you. Those give me 2-minute videos. Like, I would have told my younger self that Rick Snider was going to evolve to put himself out there on social media, I probably would have called you crazy, but that was who Rick was. And like, he always just found a way to keep his voice going. And that's because his opinion mattered too. Like, there are certain reporters that, I'm obviously younger than you are, but there are ones that you just always know that have been around the team. It's him. It's Kime. I think it's been 5, 6, 7 years since Rich Tandler passed away. And Rich was always a part of the team's coverage as well. Like, there are names that are just synonymous with this team. And he was one of them. And to your point as well, I always loved that he was a Washingtonian, man, like doing the tours downtown. He always had food review spots down in the city. He was in the city more than I was, it seemed like. And so it's just a sad loss, because I always appreciate someone too that not only covers our teams, but really ingrains themselves with what this city is about and what this community is about. And that's what Rick was to me.
He and I had a lot in common. Like, he's much older than me, obviously, and been around a lot longer than me. And like, we're colleagues, but I did electronic media and he did, the written form. And so they are very different things. And so we didn't have that one in common, but we had a lot of other things in common. We both loved food. We both love this area, like want to wave the flag for this area very badly. We both love the football team. And we also both are hustlers. Like, we both really love the idea of trying new things, reinventing ourselves. And so I was sad to see him go. I thought he was an inspirational person. Like, when people look back on the coverage of the team, I hope they recognize, what he did. He was there, starting to cover the team when the glory era began, and was, as of 3-4 weeks ago, me and him were having a conversation about Saratoga on the sidelines at the practice facility. And, here he was. I think I joke with him every year. I'm like, you're never going to go away. You're never going to retire, are you? And he said, nope. Some of us, I'm one of them too. Kime's one of them. We laugh about it. We're lifers. Like, I'll never, I love what I do. I love the privilege of being around it. And no matter what, capacity I'm in, I think I'll always want to be connected to it. That's how he was. And so he was really, really had a great presence in our city. I agree with you. I like to wave the flag for our area too. I'm a proud Washingtonian. He was really a proud Washingtonian. So he's going to be missed. And I was sorry to see the news. R.I.P. Rick.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, everybody. Talk to you tomorrow. Bram wants to show ESPN 630, the Sports Capital.